thick white crescents carried to the coast by slaves staggering under their weight and transported by dhow to the ivory market of Zanzibar. The year was 1898. Photography had come to Africa by then, and a formal portrait was taken of the immense pair of tusks posed together in a tall, ornately carved doorway in Zanzibar City's old quarter. Two Africans in fezzes and white tunics steady the upright, curving columns of ivory that tower over them, their tips turned outward in an enticing splay, implying the continent's extravagant and seemingly inexhaustible riches. They would come to be known as the Kilimanjaro tusks, and remain to this day the largest pair ever recorded. Their size makes it difficult to think of them as elephant teeth, but that is what they were. The bigger one weighed 236 pounds, the other 228. Each was more than 10 feet long and as thick as a man's thigh. From their tips, worn smooth from ripping tree bark and gouging water holes, to the thin, chipped edges of the deeply hollowed bases that once held each tusk's nerve pulp, a palimpsest of stains, nicks, and fissures told of a long life in the bush. All this long-burnished, mysterious braille would have felt cool to the hand, even in the African climate, for ivory absorbs sweat. The carved doorway where the tusks were photographed was the entrance to Nyumba Pembe, Ivory House, a high-walled American compound that housed in its courtyard a giant scale for the weighing of elephant teeth. Over the years, many who shaped Africa's colonial history walked through those doors. Explorers and adventurers, including Richard Burton, John Speke, and Henry Morton Stanley, the infamous slaver Tipu Tip, Arab traders, Indian merchants, and a succession of American consuls who helped secure the lucrative trade. There, the agent for Arnold Chaney and Company, the powerful New York ivory importing firm, purchased the Kilimanjaro tusks for 1,000 pounds sterling, almost $5,000, then the highest sum ever paid for a pair of tusks. This photograph is worth study. It sums up not just a moment at the end of the 19th century, but a cusp in the timeline of this seductive substance that is apparent to us only now. The proud door of Ivory House was the gateway for much of the global trade in elephant tusks at the time. Zanzibar was the central market, and Americans dominated the business. Millennia of commerce in white gold had come and gone before these tusks made their appearance, and prior to the 20th century there was little talk of dwindling elephant herds affecting the supply of ivory. We now know that the photograph was taken just before the apex of the long and troubled history of the worldwide desire for this uniquely sensuous material, a desire fanned by its availability. The ivory trade, despite the human cruelty and animal slaughter required to satisfy it, made that possible. In 1898, none foresaw that less than a century later the appetite of uncontrolled commerce would threaten to consume the bulk of the remaining sub-Saharan herds that supplied it. Back then, elephants in the yet-to-be-exhausted interior were said to be as thick as flies. The story of ivory is nearly as old as the human story. Universally coveted for its beauty, color, scarcity, and ability to be finely carved, ivory has always been imbued with symbolic importance. Though ivory has been a single thread in a far greater pattern, its creamy white gleam is woven through the fabric of human history and helped to shape it. The presence of and passion for ivory have been remarkably ever-present, openly garish in some cultures, subtle and subterranean in others. Each age, each culture, from prehistoric times to ancient Rome, India, China, medieval Europe, and the Muslim world to 19th century America and Victorian Britain to modern Japan, has found its own uses, artistic, religious, decorative, functional, extravagant, frivolous, for the remarkable treasure that comes from the teeth of elephants and a few other mammals. The power of this organic substance resides in its sensuousness, its ability to awaken material desire. Long before gold and gemstones held allure, humans were drawn to ivory for crafting amulets, beads, spear points, and figurines. By the beginning of recorded history, mammoth ivory and later the similar ivory of elephants had long been a key item of trade, often supplemented by so-called lesser ivories, walrus, hippo, and boar teeth.